Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nilofer Afridi Qazi. Welcome to the series on Islam at Kuch Khaas. I thank Nabila and her team for hosting this series at Kuch Khaas. Today we have Naila Tiwana with us, who is a practicing Sufi, a student of Islam. She follows Hazrat Inayat Ali Khan's sect in Islam. Today's conversation is very relevant. Chishtiya order, the Chishtiya order. Today's conversation with all of you is regarding, in Muslim societies, can it be plural? Do we have the concept of pluralism in Islam? Is it possible to be pluralistic in Islam? And this is a conversation within the context of our tradition in Islam with a specific emphasis on a Sufiana perspective.
So I'll be speaking to you on the subject of tolerance, being Muslim and accepting the other. My discourse this evening focuses especially on the spiritual and metaphysical definition of the self and the other, and through that understanding, I wish to bring to your attention the meaning of being Muslim and its relevance to tolerance. So let me start by sharing with you a few verses from the Sufi poetry of Maulana Rumi, Rahmatullah alayh. Maulana says, when you look carefully, this world is all war. Moat fights with moat, like belief with unbelief. But in the light of the spiritual eye, our war and our peace are not from ourselves. They are between his two fingers. His two fingers here is an ishara, an indication towards the divine fingers. Of course, metaphorically speaking. So it's a like cryptic reference to a higher metaphysical cause behind the conflict that we encounter in our world. Sufis practice what is known as ta'wil. Ta'wil is simply tracing a thing back to its divine origin. And this is based on the Quranic reminder, and unto him is the journeying. Unto God is the return of all. The two fingers of God, as I said, are a cryptic reference to the concomitance of polarities necessitated by the divine manifesting impulse. To be a creator, God had to manifest creation, and this is how the existence of the other came into being. The perceived other. Manifestation demanded the presence of the other, yet absolute unity did not allow any duality. Thus, the issue of reconciling multiplicity with the uncompromisable principle of unity occupied Muslim philosophers and mystics from the very beginning. There are many complex and subtle explanations of this seeming contradiction, and this, of course, would be not the appropriate time or place to go into them, but it would suffice us to know that to be caught in the contradictions of apparent multiplicity is to lose track of the essential unity behind all of existence and behind that multiplicity. So we could say that strife pertains to the realm of distance from the origin, whereas the nearer we move to our source of being, the more we gain insight into our oneness. An interesting analogy would be a fountain, how the water at its mouth or source is one, and then on being thrown up, how it falls in showers of separate streams. What is one at the source becomes separated at a distance from it. The Quran clearly declares those who believe and those who follow the Jewish scriptures and the Christians and the Sabians, any who believe in God and the last day and work righteousness will have their reward with their Lord. The path or the Sharia can differ according to cultural differences and interpretive variance. Interpretations and juristic formulations are all human attempts to understand, analyze, and apply faith. The absolute, however, we must remember, is a combination of all paths, interpretations, and cultures. Nothing can be excluded from it. Otherwise, it would not be the absolute. A religious system can be considered absolute and closed only if it has the depth and the breadth to hold all other systems within it. In other words, it is a paradox. Only that system is worthy of being complete and therefore closed, which has the capacity to remain open. Wasn't the message of the Quran just that? When Allah says the Prophet believes in what has been revealed to him by his Lord, and so do the faithful in God, his angels, his books, and the prophets, and we make no distinction amongst the apostles. By being intolerant as Muslims today, we are closing what Allah has willed to stay open. Now, since the recognition of pluralism requires the willingness to admit different viewpoints, it requires of us living in this world of increasing global definition, a familiarization with the idea of friendly coexistence. And this friendly coexistence cannot be possible without patient tolerance. For as long as humanity endures, there will remain difference of opinion. Man cannot hope to impose a uniform viewpoint on all simply because that is against the nature of things. Each one sees according to what his/her vision reveals. And science proves that our eyes see images differently. Everyone does not see the world in the same way. Perception is not just a collection of inputs from our sensory system. Instead, it is the brain's interpretation of the stimuli which is based on an individual's genetic and past experience. Allah knows this and so commands man, "Do not be an obstinate transgressor, rather be of those that submit. Do not take your ego as a false god, rather submit to the Rabbul Alameen." Nowhere does God refer to himself as Rabbul Muslimeen. The Prophet too is Rahmatul Lil Alameen and not Rahmatul Lil Muslimeen. There are signs in this to be inferred. When I declare today that my way is the right way and yours is wrong, I have slipped from the station of submission into the station of tamarrud or rebellion. The truth is that there is one religion but many paths, changeable law and jurisprudence. The interpretation of the legal rules of the Quran and Sunnah have been interpreted by scholars to create the science of jurisprudence. Jurisprudence has wrongly come to be identified as Islamic law. Sharia does not mean law. It means a way to the watering source, and therefore a way of life. But when it is understood as the generic Islamic code of law, it becomes difficult to accept other systems of law as against it or along with it. However, if we understand it in the light of its essential rather than its generic sense, as a way of life governed by moral reasonableness, or what we call murawwa, within the framework of religious monotheism, we would be able to remain open to the other as part of the divine word and creative will. Being Muslim and not accepting the other is like repeating the satanic error of rejecting the creation of man and refusing to submit to the divine command, almost like claiming, "My grandeur does not admit the presence of the other." So to be Muslim and to be intolerant, I would say, is an oxymoron. To be Muslim and to be tolerant is perfectly compatible. Recently, I read that Aung San Suu Kyi, the Burmese opposition leader, in her address to a wide American audience, responded to a question about dissidents by saying, "We are not dissidents forever. We have become dissidents so that there will be no dissidents in the future." Dissidence is like adolescence, a passing phase before one attains maturity. Similarly, I would like to say that disagreement, division, and intolerance make up the adolescent stage of the evolution of human consciousness. In its mature state, it will of necessity have to fall into the silent harmony of unity, because there is no other way. And for that to happen, we perhaps have to become intolerant of intolerance itself first, another paradox. To become intolerant so that there would be no intolerance in the future. As the philosopher Karl Popper said, if we extend unlimited tolerance even to those who are intolerant, if we are not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of the intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed and tolerance with them. So with this, I'd like to end my discourse for this evening.
So much, Naila.